How are our lost loved ones involved in our lives? Where do we go when we die? And what happens to our pets once they pass? Tune into the Dead Life podcast to have questions like these answered and call in with your own questions. The Dead Life takes a look into all things paranormal. I'm Allison Dubois. I inspired the hit television show Medium. I'm a New York Times bestselling author who's written 6 books on life after death, and I spent 20 years collaborating with the police on cold cases. I've talked to the dead my whole life. I'm an expert on what they see, hear, feel, where they go, and who they're with. Tune in every Tuesday for a fresh episode of The Dead Life. It will change how you live your life.
What's the worst thing that's happened to you on a flight? Why is AARP harassing me? And yes, marijuana is legal in some places, but that doesn't mean it should stink up streets meant to be stunk up by homeless people. These are just some of the issues torturing my mind. Hi, I'm Josh Spiegel. Listen to my podcast, Lunatic in the Newsroom. Timely topics through my filter. And what a strange filter it is. Lunatic in the Newsroom with Josh Spiegel. You'll never look at news the same way.
You buy a pair of socks, that's 2 socks. You buy a pair of Bombas socks, that's 4 socks. Because one purchased is one donated. Socks are the #1 most requested clothing item in homeless shelters. So when you buy a pair of super comfortable Bombas socks, you're also donating a pair. Bombas customers have powered over 150 million donations. So Bombas would like to thank you 150 million times. But we only have like 30 seconds. Go to bombas.com and use code AUDIO for 20% off your first purchase. That's BOMBAS.com and use code AUDIO at checkout.
Episode 20 of The Messenger, the Rachael cancer scam. I wanted to get you some info on the podcast. I'm going to be taking a break for a minute, and I'll explain why. And when I started all this, I never would have thought that timing would have been a factor to release anything to you. Never thought that the calendar or the clock or any of that would have any sort of impact on how I should release anything. And I'll get into that in a minute with you and explain why. Now, you probably heard me say that the first season was written and recorded between April and May and June of 2024, about a year ago. And, I had put it away at that point until it was, going to get released. I had to do some sound design and some other things, but it was just my voice with no music. I was really still raw from everything. So clarifying it all for you is pretty important to me. And I want to do that for you now. That's what this episode is. I found out about her lies on December 20th, 2023. You heard all about that. And then I ended up getting the call from her 2 or 3 days later. Honestly, hearing her voice after 18 months was somehow still something that I coveted. Obviously, I was hurt. I was destroyed. But it was one of those things for me. Her voice always provided some level of comfort for me. I'm a big voice person. I always have been. I don't know what it is. You may be like that as well. There are certain people in my life whose voices comfort me when I hear them. And hers was one of those. So when we had that first conversation, she claimed that parts of her story had truth to it. She claimed that she did have cancer and that she went into the hospital for a short period of time. Of course, I followed up quickly with, so do you still have cancer? She said, I don't know and I don't care. I haven't been to the doctor. I said, so tell me why you lied to me about the hospital stay and all the horrors for a year and a half. Being held prisoner in a way in that hospital room from the alleged doctors, the attacks, and all of that. What part of your story was true? Please enlighten me. And of course I was angry. I wasn't soft and warm. It was just me looking for answers. She claimed that she was being held prisoner in a sense by Mark. That was the reason she lied, that he'd never let her leave. He would never agree to separating. And I said, why did you tell me that you were divorced in 2012 and that you had custody of the kids and all that? That's when this story of your cancer and all that began. And her deflection, like you would probably expect, was there in a second. She said that she and Mark were never technically married because of what happened at the end of his first marriage. She said that divorce just was never handled properly. And I said, well, listen, basically cut the shit. Don't continue to lie to me. And she took offense to that. She said, well, we were never married properly. I said, you went back with him to Vegas on May 27th, 2003 and married him again a year to the day exactly that you did the first one. The record of the marriage is public on the Clark County website. I have it. And there was silence for just a second. But of course, she was ready with more garbage, more excuses. Oh, that marriage was never legal. There was an issue with it. And, listen, at this point, I had no idea that just 9 months after that, by the way, that she would run out and marry another guy while she and Mark were still married. I never got to question her about that. I didn't know at that time. But I suppose what would be the point on questioning her? It's not like I'll ever hear anything that will resemble anything that's even close to the truth from her. At this point, I had no idea that she was telling coworkers at the airport that she was a pilot and a trauma nurse and a helicopter pilot. That pilot plot line and nurse plot line, it never played out with me. It just played out exclusively at the Piedmont Air American Airlines station at the SLO airport. They got that story. They got the story of the alleged self-harm attempt by daughter number 2. She's such an involved con artist and scammer that she can run multiple scams at once. Remember, those lies were happening while I was thinking she was in the hospital. All that stuff with the airport started when she started working there in the fall of 2022. I'm thinking she's in protective isolation and she can't talk. And yet she's flying all over Central California, according to her coworkers, saving lives in that helicopter, delivering babies and getting ready for her onboarding date to be a pilot with American. I thought she was a lawyer and she'd been in LVN. That's all she ran on me, in addition to the cancer scam. She claimed to still be an LVN as well. And of course, she was scamming Mark the entire time too. Actually, the 22 years at that point of their marriage, having this affair with me, an affair that started as physical and emotional, and ultimately became just an emotional affair as I couldn't see her. I've heard from parents of kids that go to school with their daughters, even a couple parents that drove her kids in carpools, softball, volleyball, school, whatever it was, people that said her daughters were telling them that Rachael was a pilot. She made her kids complicit in this scam of hers. They never knew the truth. She had everyone in her life going. In 2012, when she told me that she had cancer, she told a friend of hers that she worked with at the same time, and you'll hear from her in an upcoming episode, that she was also sick with cancer at that time as well. That woman watched her run a cancer and pregnancy scam on a guy that they both worked with. It's a pretty interesting interview, and I'm looking forward to sharing with you. It's pretty damning. When she alleged to have gone to the hospital by ambulance on June 5th, 2022, I only spoke with her and heard her voice once until after she was outed. Remember, she claimed that because of the CPS investigation that her youngest was going to have to be in the hospital with her. There had to have been some planning on her part as to how this was all going to play out. And if I'm being honest, how she was going to play me. She used the daughter's presence as an excuse to not be able to speak freely or really talk to me for the first month. Even though I would ask, I would tell her, I just want to hear your voice. Even if it's a quick hello, a quick conversation, just please. And this is just another place where the humiliation or the shame comes in, I guess. It's tough for me to allow myself any grace here because it makes me feel like an idiot. Rachael had her plan in place to keep me from asking her about calls. She actually claimed after about 25 days in the hospital that she wasn't eating at all. They were going to have to put a feeding tube in. The first one is known as an NG tube. That's a tube that is fed through your nose into your throat, and they feed you liquid through that tube. And as luck would have it, she claimed that there was an issue with that, and within a week, she was given another feeding tube, which was inserted down her throat. She claimed that she was unable to talk from that point. Of course, that tube would remain in her throat for the remainder of the fake hospital stay so that she never had to pick up the phone. A quick and easy lie about why we couldn't talk, I guess. She would claim that the only time it was removed was to change the tube or when she was having a procedure of some sort done out of her room. What I did know at that point, though, is that I continued to gently press her and say things like, when they pull the feeding tube, will you call me? I just want to hear your voice. And she never would. That only happened once in 563 days. And shortly after that, she claimed that due to her compromised immune system, that she was being put into protective isolation and all of that. She thought of every single way that she could to just cut me off from any oral communication by her. We'd obviously continue to talk and message some days for the entire day and into the evenings. She'd keep me at bay, continue to have my attention. I guess have me the way she wanted to have me. The concept that she did all of this for attention is just so baffling to me. I continue to ask, what does it take for someone to do this? You know, the narcissist does want to have your attention. They do want you to care about them. And they care about you. What they don't care about, though, is your opinion on things. They don't want your perspective. It means nothing to them. They've always got an answer. There's always a different talk track. This is what made her so dangerous for me. It's what makes her so dangerous for everyone in her life. The more that she pulled away, the more that I tried to stay close and show her that I wasn't giving up, to find other ways to communicate with her. She would text and I'd respond with a video response. I'd send pictures and whatever she wanted. I was basically her puppet during this time, I suppose. I allowed myself to get caught up in her web, to not question her. And then that took a toll on me. We're going to take a quick commercial break. I want to encourage you to follow our social media. I'd recommend you follow Instagram. In the show notes, you'll find a link to all of them. There's a lot more information and backup for what I'm discussing. Much of the evidence that I reference in these episodes here, you'll find there. You'll see screenshots, additional commentary in the way of videos. I also want to encourage you to comment and send along a DM if you've got questions. I answer everything that comes my way. Also, please take a moment to rate the podcast here. Leave a review if you're so inclined. Thanks for following. And this episode will continue after this message.
We, the Brain Candy Podcast, that is, are hoping to reach ladies like you.
If you like interesting fun facts, laughter, learning, quirkiness, and hilarity,
Join us every Monday and Thursday for new episodes hosted by me, Susie Meister, PhD in Religious Studies.
and me, Sarah Rice, AMFT.
We're looking to make actual, real personal connections and a community.
Come on, ladies, give us a click and come join us.
In July of 22, about a month after her admission, she began radiation, and that was torturous for her, she would claim. And that's when I asked her what I could do to keep her calm and help and provide a distraction. If you recall this part of the story, she said, I just want to hear your voice. Will you record some voice notes for me so that I can listen before I go in and afterwards? Of course, I started it that day. She claimed it helped so much. And from there, I began to write those stories, those episodes of Harry Loves Rachael, 15, 20 minutes long, about 80 of them. It's crazy. I still have them on a drive. I can't listen to them, and I can't tell you that I'll ever release any of them. They were, in a way, my daily love letter to her, my commitment to her, a way to remain, steadfastly by her side, to be her person, to provide hope, motivation, and really anything that I could, humor, entertainment, any of it. I play my guitar, I do anything she wanted virtually. She would say, I want to see what you're doing when you leave the house. Will you start recording yourself when you leave? And I would tape myself, send her a video from the car, whatever I was doing, wherever I was going. There were days I didn't do much at times. I suppose maybe certain periods of time for a few hours, half a day, something along those lines, where it was just so difficult to muster up the strength to smile, to be entertaining, or just hide my sadness or my grief. My worry for her and about a possible future for us was constantly at the forefront of my mind. If you examine that for just a few seconds with me, the cruelty of it all becomes more apparent. She knew exactly what she was doing every step of the way. You heard the way the last episode ended. And you heard me say that she would have Holt say, make sure you're talking to somebody. Make sure you're getting some help. It's like someone punching you in the face or putting a hot iron on you, whatever analogy you want to make. It's like someone doing something horrible to you. And while they're doing it, they're looking at you, taking the time to say, now, this is going to hurt. You may want to get it looked at. Make sure you're okay. I guess it's taken me 25 episodes to finally have that perspective on the emotional terror that she unleashed. It's so very simple, I suppose, yet I was just, in the dark, alone through it all. So back to communicating with her after she was outed, I do want to point out to you that the interview with Matt earlier in the season provided some additional insight into that and some things that I didn't share with Matt, and there are some things that I still haven't shared with Matt. She was claiming that she was still dreaming of being mine one day and finding a way out of her situation with Mark. She would say, I don't have any right to ask you to remain by my side any longer. I know I've lost the privilege. But understand that I do love you, and I've always loved you, and I do want you. You're probably screaming at me right now. That's not how people that love each other treat each other. I know. You're right. We continued to stay in touch daily or every few days. We went to WhatsApp at her request. She had me get a new phone and a new number and set my WhatsApp name to Stacy AA. AA for American Airlines. She insisted that I only text her with something work-related. Can you change shifts with me? Can you cover a shift? That kind of thing. Make it look like work. I acquiesced to the request. She began to tell me that Mark wasn't letting her do anything. He was checking her phone every day. He was taking her phone from her when she was at home and not allowing her to text anyone. She said that Mark was threatening to make her change her number. He was threatening to move so that she wasn't able to be around Russ and so that I didn't have her address. I couldn't find her. He demanded she change her email address so no one could reach her. She set this up like she was a woman in a horribly abusive, tragic relationship. Mark was a monster that would take what he wanted from her sexually and other ways, just controlling everything that she did. He wouldn't let her drive to work. She wasn't allowed to take her car. He would make her leave her car at work if he was going to have to go work and leave town for the day on a day that she was off. She was trapped, according to her. It had all the hallmarks of a woman abused. During her stay at the hospital at one point, when Holt realized she wasn't being fed properly and that the abuse was happening with the doctors, and I told him what she had told me, he claimed that he was very close to getting her transferred to a nearby rehab facility away from those doctors. They had an emergency med unit and a cardiac unit, and, of course, she would have Dr. Holt come to the rescue. It happened 2 days after the alleged fight between Jared and Holt. Holt said to me, have you ever heard of Elizabeth Smart or J.C. Duggart? Have you ever heard of those stories? They were kidnapped, sexually abused, and starved. They were both found alive and brought back to health, and now they live normal lives with marriages and even children. I look at Rachael as a survivor, someone we pulled out of the trenches and saved. The worst moments of her life. You did that. You helped. You got the information. You saved her. How's that for bullshit? It's all Rachael typing that out. One thing that's happening present day is that Rachael hasn't worked since May, I'm told. Here we are a couple months later, and she has no income. Sure, Russ is helping her, but he's gone through a divorce. His wife has taken a huge chunk of his retirement, and he's out on medical leave as well. Both of them are out. Rachael claiming that she had some sort of an injury to her neck, and it went through her nerves and got to her foot, and she's having to wear a cast. She went to work one day in a cast claiming that she needed to be out on medical. Injury that happened there, probably her way of gaming workman's comp money in a possible case against the airline. She's struggling, things aren't good. Russ is out of work, on medical leave as well, with some surgery or something. That's the universe at work, though, I suppose. This tough time that they're going through now probably has to do with her being out at work, for sure, but certainly this podcast and our social media has something to do with it as well. She's now resorted to using Facebook Marketplace to sell whatever she has. She's selling shoes and clothes and books and her Barbie collection. And here are a couple things that you might find entertaining or ironic or just plain crazy. I learned about her Facebook Marketplace sales through a couple of people that are in this group that I've named the Slow Patrol. The first picture that I received of this, first evidence, was almost too good to be true. But it was true. Rachael was selling one of her Barbies. The I Can Be a Pilot Barbie. Never opened, never used. On sale now for $70. Yeah. Another person sent me a picture of the book she was selling a couple days after that. One picture had all her aviation books and magazines. And another, some of the non-aviation books, was the J.C. Duggard book. That book was one of several things that obviously became part of her playbook. Think about what I just told you about Holt. I recorded a couple videos about all of this for our social media. Social is in many ways ahead of the podcast with a number of things, including those. I want to encourage you to follow the Instagram account. It's easy to find. It's The Rachael Cancer Scam, a little underscore in between each word. You can also just Google The Rachael Cancer Scam and get to us that way. Anyway, we continued our limited communication, made some loose plans to see each other. Nothing ever came of anything at all. I was just left believing that she couldn't have her phone, that she couldn't take her car anywhere. She was just a prisoner. That's why I stuck around. I thought I could help her. When I got frustrated, I said to her once that I was going to call the Atascadero Police Department and tell them what was going on, and I would show up when they were going to show up and help get you out to safety. This set her off. She said, "Do not do that. If you do that, you'll never see me again. Do not try to control my life. I'll leave when the time is right." She warned me multiple times about it, just showing up unannounced. It's a hell of a little wake-up call. She would say, women like me don't get to just walk away from relationships like this and end up okay. I need to protect my daughters from him, and I'll go when it's safe. She would tell me that she was 1,000 hours away from getting her commercial pilot's license and being eligible to be hired by American, but it was expensive and it was time-consuming. With her other responsibilities, she would say that she was so depressed that she was spending a lot of time when she was off collecting and organizing her things because she was planning her own suicide. Didn't want to be here anymore. Didn't have anything to live for. All of that. She would repeatedly say those things. At one point I called bullshit. January of 2024, while we were communicating, in about a month or so, I wrote and recorded the first episode of what would become this podcast, and I sent it to her. I was pissed. I was feeling like she was absolutely just a liar. It was becoming more and more apparent each day. I don't know why I stuck around. She heard it. She went sideways. She sent me a couple of messages, one saying that hearing me make this podcast about her fucked up life made her sick, but she probably deserved it, and that she would forever live with the guilt and shame of it all, what she had done to me. At one point she said, "Why is it so important for you to tell my story? It's my story to tell, not yours." Like she somehow was that self-important, that she had the right to tell me not to share my story in all this. Think about what you did to me.
There are a lot of true crime podcasts out there, and I have 30 seconds to convince you why you should check out Crime Lines. Crime Lines is one of those shows that just lays it all out there. The backstory, the legal context, and details of cases you haven't heard before. If you hear about a true crime case and want to know what happened and why, you're my kind of listener. You can check out Crime Lines wherever you get your podcasts. That's Crime Lines, one word, and get ready to dive deep.
Back and forth continued about a month or so. For what? I don't have a reasonable response for you. In March, I got a message out of the blue from Mark. I had told him that I wasn't going to speak with Rachael, so he didn't need to worry about me. I wanted to divert him from me at that point, really, so I could continue to chat with her. Well, the message said, "What do you know about my second daughter?" I told him what I knew. She had told me that daughter was the product of an assault. But that led to the truth. He sent me this tape that he made of her conversation. You know, the reality is that he actually found the father, the real father. She wasn't a victim. That tape, by the way, was an hour long, the single most damning piece of evidence that I could ever even ask for. It's Rachael in her own words. Mark had moved into an RV that they own, parked it in the driveway. He was sleeping and living in the driveway, which is where this was recorded. She was crying about her life. She explained why she cheated repeatedly, why she behaved like she did. All just another cry for attention, I guess. For the attention of men. It was just insane to hear her explaining herself. At one point, she told Mark that he should just take the girls and that she would move. It was poor me. Her foot was to the floor with that act. It became clear to me that she was coming and going when she wanted to, and he also told me that she was still seeing Russ the entire time. That she had been at his house for the week prior, every night and many days, sometimes not coming home at all. I was just fucking furious. I got played again. I was done. I was done and ready for what would be next, which is what you're hearing now. I sent her a text. I said, "I hear you're not a prisoner in your home, that you've been at Russ's house, that you can use your car, you can use your phone, and you've been seeing him this entire time." Her response to me was, "Who's this?" Digest that for a minute. Almost as good as "my situation has changed and I haven't included you." Who's this? Who the fuck do you think this is? Right? I explained that I heard from Mark and that he told me. She said, "Please stop talking to him. You're making it worse for me. You have no idea." I said, "Nice try, but I'm ready to share the podcast. I'm going to finish writing my story and I'm putting it out." She is just pure evil, a rotten human being. This sequence of events fueled my desire to share my story with everybody, including everyone she knows. I continue to communicate with Mark. We exchanged details and messages. At one point, he shared with me the prior 2 years of text messages from his phone using an app called iMazing, made for iPhone users that want to download texts and notes and anything else on their phones. I couldn't read it. Honestly, I sat on that document, that trove of evidence, for about a year. One day this past March, I started going through those messages while the season was going on. I started comparing the messages she was sending him with what she was sending me on certain days. It was brutal. It was sickening. She's telling me she's near death. Holt is telling me how bad it is. She's got her fake daughter telling me how awful it is. Yet, she had taken about 17 trips during that time, and she was continuing to take trips at that time as well. Most with her daughters, but a couple with Russ. That tape, I'm ready to share it with you. You'll hear it all. It's painful. It needs to be heard, though. It's Rachael in her own words. Pathetic. Filled with excuses and lies. The interesting thing in this for me was that it was in that moment, I guess, after listening to the tape, hearing some of the names she was talking about and more about the other destruction that she had left in her wake, I began on this trail of finding the people she talked about and others. These people and more that have not been discussed, some you'll end up hearing from and hearing about, they were out there. I went to court in July of last year, literally about a year ago, on Mark's behalf, based on this restraining order and the nonsense she was claiming that Mark had been doing. The funny thing about that restraining order, she got it 2 weeks after the tape was recorded where she said, just take the girls, they're better off with you. Yet 3 days after that order was issued, she went back to their home after she told the judge she was in fear of her life. I have her on Ring camera trying to enter her code in the front door, then walking around the back of the house where there's no camera and a door that doesn't have a lock on it into the garage. Why? I suspect it was to plant evidence, and I'll share a bunch of my suspicions and more related to an investigation involving the Paso Police Department, not just into Mark, but into Rachael as well. The story just gets so crazy at this point. And, it's become in many ways like a true crime story within my story. This is where all the things in this season came out and came to light. I'm going to provide a bunch of background that you need on an upcoming episode on that. So I guess at this moment, I'm going to put the podcast on hold for what will likely be about a month or so, maybe a bit longer. Rachael went to Paso PD with a trove of fabricated evidence, which led to Mark being arrested and charged. The police indicated that much of what she submitted was fabricated. That all went to the district attorney, and you'll get all those details in time. I will point you back to that Instagram account to see some videos and some of that detail and some of the actual evidence. The hearing that's coming up is going to be telling, and I need to gather as much info as I can and report back to you, which I promise that I will, so please be patient with me. Before I end this episode, I want to explain a couple things to you regarding the voices that you've been hearing this season. Rachael's voice is a clone that I made. I took a recording that I have of her, which she sent me in the way of a video. That's what she sounds like. That's not an actress. It's her. Her voice was a little hoarse at the time, but that's Rachael's voice. And the voice of Dr. Holt is a friend of mine by the name of Jay Dean. Jay hired me when I was 17 years old, and we've remained friends ever since. I'm 59 at this moment. He's a voice actor and an audio book narrator. And that voice of his is one that's always provided a certain amount of comfort to me. I talked about the comfort in voices at the beginning of this episode. And when I was thinking about what to do about Holt's voice, thinking about hiring an actor doing something non-AI related, I had a conversation with him about my story. And a couple days later, light went off in my head. And I sent him a text. I said, listen, man, you'd be perfect for this. Can you be Dr. Holt? And he said, send me what you need me to read. And that's how season 2 starts, with Jay as Dr. Holt, reaching out to me after she was pronounced dead. When I heard that, it was just so clear to me that he was perfect for what the podcast needed. And I'm thrilled, beyond grateful, that he's donated his beautiful voice and his time for his treatment of Holt. You won't hear that voice again. So I can kind of take the mask off, pull the curtain back, and let you know that's Jay Dean. Andrew Reagan is a young composer and filmmaker. His last name is spelled Ragan. He and I found each other after I finished the recording of the audio for season 1. I asked him to work on episode 1. It needed sound design. And he did that. I heard it. And I was elated. He scores every single episode of this podcast, section by section, everything you hear other than the interviews that I do. And he scores them based upon the tone of my voice, based upon the content. His work is amazing. He captures the moments beautifully, especially the sadness. And I'm grateful to him, but he's on Instagram or TikTok. He's all over the place. Andrew Reagan. And my friend Matt, Agent Grasso, served as my partner continues to serve as my partner. You heard him in the interview earlier this season, and I haven't spoken much about the importance that he's played in all this. You heard a little bit of it, but I met him in 1999. He worked for me. We developed a close friendship and have continued to be the best of friends since that time. His help with writing and ideas and his guidance has been amazing. There are more people to thank, but I'll do that somehow another way. So this leaves me with where we are today during this last week of July. I have to wait to see what happens with this hearing with Mark and Rachael. It's possible that it could go sideways for him depending upon how things go. And that would lead me to expose what I believe is an enormous cover-up on Rachel's behalf at the highest levels of law enforcement in San Luis Obispo. It's shocking. So please check back, get to us on Instagram, and I'll be back to you in another month for another episode of The Messenger, the Rachael Cancer Scam.